Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order and begin with roll call.
Vice President Anderson, members of the board, good evening. Let the record show that 4 members are present.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and do a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. At this time, I'd like to move for the approval of the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. And now we will have superintendent's report. Dr. Foley?
So this evening we start with acknowledgements and celebrations. And we're going to start with a special acknowledgement and celebration. This evening is the last governing board meeting for 2 of our governing board members. And we're going to honor both of them this evening, although one of them is unable to be with us this evening as she is out of the country. She is unable to be here this evening. And so, but we still want to acknowledge and honor her. First of all, one of the things that you should know is that being a board member is a volunteer position. These amazing women volunteer hundreds of hours of time from reading documentation, preparing for meetings, coming to events. This is a very time-intensive job, and I never has it been more challenging, really, than it was in the last couple of years. I mean, pandemic school boards truly earned a special place in everyone's heart because of the work that they had to do. This is truly a thankless job and hours of work. And the Higley District has been so blessed because the women who have been elected on this board, they have a true heart, they have a true passion, they have a true love for this district, for their students, for their community, and they work tirelessly to make sure that what happens in this district is for the betterment of all. And so as 2 of them, it's an elected position, and as your position comes to a close, there's an election, and our election has 2 new board members who are being actually sworn in this week, who will then start with us in January, Amanda Wade and Anna Van Hoek. But tonight we are honoring Amy Kaler, who began on the she's been in the governing board role since 2016, and she's had many hats in our district, from when she worked at the schools to being on the governing board to serving in board president. She's been very, very involved. And, her children have recently graduated, and so she has other new opportunities that she is looking forward to spending time doing. But we honor Amy for all the work that she has done. And then this evening we're going to honor Jill Wilson. Can you come over here, Jill? So, yay! So Jill has also been on the board since 2019, and just as I described, hours and hours of time. If this woman can be at an event and there's not a schedule conflict, she will be there. Again, the hours are tireless. Her children are in the district. One recently graduated, and another one is in high school, and has truly put her heart and soul into this role. So we have a special present tonight. We have one for Amy Kaler. When she's back in town, we will give it to her then. But we'd like for Jill to open this for just a second. Christine, help me wrap this nice.
I'm like, the bow is a little tight. It's a little weird to open a gift in front of everyone.
We want you to see this. So it's like or a charcuterie board. We figured a board for the board member with the Higley logo on it. And so we absolutely are so thankful for all you've done for this district. Vice President Mrs. Anderson, did you have a few things you wanted to say? And while she says it, if cabinet members would come this way, because we're going to join for a picture.
Just want to take a second to say, I didn't know Jill before I came on the board, and man, I feel like we've been lifelong friends, and she has really carried, not just me, but a lot of people, a lot of community and staff and board members through, and she's so loving and so compassionate, and this is a woman that clearly does it from the heart. This is not a woman who has stepped up to do it for any political reasons, for anything other than selfless love for children and for the school district. And man, I don't want her to leave. I really don't.
You buried your head in the sand a little.
I don't want her to leave, but I just want to say thank you. You are precious, and I really look forward to seeing your face out there. And okay, thank you for everything.
Thank you. I'm going to say, are you guys okay? Okay. I have to thank my husband and my son who was able to be here tonight. There was a lot of bribery with my kids in the last 4 years to go to events with me, and payment of dinner or dates from my husband. So my whole family has served this community through all the events they've attended as well. And I just want to thank the cabinet. I'm going to miss you guys. I'm going to miss it. It's bittersweet. Everybody keeps asking me what's going to happen next, and I'm like, I'll go back to the audience where I sat for 3 years. I truly care about our community, and it's bittersweet today. So, but I know Higley's in the best place it can be moving forward, and we will continue to do great things at Higley. Thank you.
So what we're going to do, we're going to celebrate some students, and we're going to do our points of pride. And then we're going to slide this up, and we've got little cupcakes. So anyone who'd like to, we're going to take a little recess. Anyone who'd like a treat to help us honor Mrs. Wilson, we'd love for you to be able to do that. So we're going to move on because we have some more students to celebrate. Is our swimmer? He's here. All right. We know he is super busy, but we have an amazing athlete to acknowledge and honor tonight. Mr. Dilly, can I have you come up, and would you please help us recognize our swimmer of the year?
Thank you. All right, it is my pleasure to recognize Keaton Jones at tonight's meeting. Once in a while this is going to sound cheesy, but it's 100% true. Once in a while we're blessed to see something special happen. For the last 4 years, we've had such a blessing. Keaton, in his 4 years at Higley, has completely rewritten the record books. It just says Keaton. All the way down. I think by the end he was just finding new races to race to break another record. But while he was doing that and stacking gold medals, culminating this last year at the state championships, won another gold, broke a 12-year-old record for AIA that people thought was unbreakable, and then took home AIA Swimmer of the Year for the entire state of Arizona. He's also competing for the U.S. team at the Pacific Games, taking home a bronze, and signing a scholarship to Cal. For my non-swim fans, that's like going to Alabama for football. That's the highest of the high. Everyone on that team's a U.S. Olympian. We're going to be watching Keaton put on the hat with the flag on the side of it, representing the United States. But while he's doing that, he's also one of our best students, one of our best human beings, the nicest kid that you'll ever meet. He's literally, I'm getting a little emotional, but he's the type of kid you want to ask your kids to be. Keaton, come on down.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm a senior. Time definitely flew by. I still remember when I was swimming in elementary school and all my friends were like, "You do that every day? You're in the pool every day?" Yeah, it's been a long journey. I know everyone in this room doesn't know me, doesn't always been there, but I mean, I couldn't have done everything I've done without all the people in this room, and it's been a privilege to represent this district for my entire swim career, and you guys definitely made it easy and accepted my position, and I just really want to thank everyone. Yeah, it's crazy it's over. I'm happy though.
We want to get a picture with you. Okay. Alan, join us. Come join us. Come join us. Okay, now we get to do points of pride, and we have middle school tonight. And here's the fun thing. We usually do these alphabetical, but of course there's a little competition in the middle schools because the first thing tonight when I speak to the administration, Mr. Potts says, why is Cooley going first? It's alphabetical, it's alphabetical. So we're going to invite Mrs. Schwartz and Mr. Brandenburg, come on up, please, so that we can acknowledge and honor our Cooley points of pride. Hand, I'll hold, whatever I can do.
All right, well, I'm going to start with Miss Britton Tucker. You want to come on up? So Britton is what we would call that exemplar student, what we want all of our students to be like. And although we do love all of our Cougars, she walks onto our campus every day, and she's a leader. Not only does she do amazing in all of her classes, she always has a smile on her face. She's super respectful. She's kind to all of her classmates. She works super hard. She also juggles ballroom dance. She does competitive ballroom dance outside of school, and also is part of our dance team at school. So straight A student, incredible at everything she does, and we're lucky to have her. So thank you, Britton.
Do you have anyone here that you brought with you tonight that you want to highlight? Where are they?
Well, welcome tonight, guys. Our next Points of Pride person we'd like to honor tonight is it's my privilege to bring up our PTO president, Miss Jennifer Keys. So Ms. Keys is our new PTO president this year. She did step up to the plate. We were in need, and she's done a fantastic job. Spent countless hours fundraising, putting together merchandise for our school on our campus. We needed help with our baseball program. She stepped up. Spent lots of time at games, at practice, kind of being our point and our contact with that. We couldn't do a lot of the things that we do on a daily basis without her. So it's my honor to welcome Ms. Keys to our campus.
Here goes.
It's 1 second.
All right. Our next person that I'd like to bring up here is Miss Mary Ann Sullivan. So for those of you that don't know, you cannot run a school without the faces that you see every day when you walk inside of our school. And Marianne is one of the most beautiful faces you will ever see when you walk into Cooley Middle School. I'll try to hold it together, I'm sorry. I'm going to read it. I'm going to lose it. I'm sorry. She's a vital part of the Cooley team. Not only does she keep us informed, she keeps us organized, running, and all with a positive attitude and smile. And that's very difficult in the front office sometimes. She works hard to make sure that everything is covered for all of our teachers, for us in the office, for all of our students. She's readily available to answer any questions that you might have. She's welcoming to all of our parents and visitors and that enter the Cooley campus. And we are so lucky to have somebody like her on our campus. So thank you for all you do. You're welcome.
My husband and my daughter and my partner in crime, Jennifer, in the front office.
Last but not least, we do have a teacher we'd like to recognize from our campus this year. It's Miss Pamela Edgar. So Miss Edgar is a vital part of our performing arts department. She runs our dance program here at Cooley. She also is a vital part of our Winter Guard program, who do tremendous things. She also splits her time with Williamsfield, and I know that talking to their administration, super lucky to have her on campus. Spends countless hours on campus. I can't tell you the amount of weekends and tournaments and events and contests and everything that she's a part of, constantly going above and beyond and spending time away from her family to spend time, teaching and her love of dance and performing arts. So really happy to have her on campus, Miss Pamela Edgar. Anybody you'd like to?
I have my husband, my daughter, my son, my mother, my mother-in-law, and my father-in-law with me.
Do we need to go double?
I think that's it.
Now, Mr. Potts, we can celebrate Sossaman. We'll also invite Mrs. Walker. And where's Mr. Keeling? There he is. And I'll help hold anything I can do.
I got this.
You got this.
I'm good. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bruce Potts. I'm the principal at Sossaman Middle School. This is Mr. Keeling. He's our assistant principal athletic director, and then Mrs. Walker, our dean of students. So pretty excited to be here tonight. Good crowd. This is way better than when I was announced as principal, so congratulations for coming out. So this is the hard part of the job. When we do a lot of staff meetings, and when we do those, we do recognitions, and it's really hard to. We have a great campus with a lot of great teachers and classified personnel and a lot of great students, so it's really hard to pinpoint who gets these awards, but I felt pretty confident in picking these, and we kind of went through the names, and we know we picked some good ones. So our first nomination is of our student, which is Joey Shipman. Joey, come on up, buddy. So Joey is a student athlete on our campus and one of our Higley Unified, and he's on our Unified sports 6th period, and he's just a great kid. So I see him every day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't get at least one fist bump. How you doing, Mr. Potts? I hope you're having a great day. And so when I was looking at names, I was kind of going through, and like I kept coming back to Joey, kept coming back to Joey. And so I had locked in what a great kid he was. He's super positive. He's like a friend to everyone, right? So we have our motto of respect and accountability on our campus. And he's like the model of that, right? He's the epitome of what that looks like. And so just for fun, I'm like, I'm going to email some teachers. I'm going to see if I get a little feedback. So give me a sentence or two about Joey. I didn't get a sentence or two. I literally got like this narrative about what a great kid he is, how hard he works in class, leaves notes for teachers if they're having a bad day. So that's who Joey Shipman is. So congratulations, Joey. Here's your award, buddy. Got you some snacks. Our next nominee is, let me skip over here, is our certified staff member, and this is Miss Baywick. So Miss Baywick teaches, she's our 8th grade math teacher. She kind of wears many hats on our campus, and so long story short here, I actually used to work for Miss Baywick back in the day. So I had a career, a short stint at Chase Bank back in the day. And so we worked on Mill Avenue together. And so Miss Baywick was actually my boss when I was about 20 years old. And so I love to tell that story, and she likes to tell it too. And so a little bit of history about us. And so, but Miss Baywick, she does a lot of stuff on our campus. She runs NJHS. It's a phenomenal group of students. I get a chance to pop in their meetings. The other day, we had some pizza and some dance moves and some white elephant. She spearheads and leads many different initiatives on our campus. She organizes assemblies with our NJHS from Red Ribbon Week, Veterans Day Assembly. She's coordinating some stuff with Queen Creek PD to come onto our campus to do some fun stuff with our students. She's a great leader on campus, always supportive of what we do, but also has good feedback for us. So she's a good source for us to go to, just to get a good vibe of what's going on our campus. And so, Ms. Baywick, we appreciate all you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fox.
Yeah. Our classified nominee is Miss Jody Wiles. Mrs. Jody Wiles, come on up. Jody is our registrar extraordinaire, right? There's a lot of things that go into running a successful campus, and a lot of those are behind the scenes, right? It's kind of mind-blowing what it takes to run a school day in and day out, all day long. And so Jody is super dedicated to what she does, super meticulous in what she does, fielding phone calls, attendance, registrations, withdrawals, it's all of it. And she's super knowledgeable and super detailed. We talked the other day about how we're both rule followers, so we were making phone calls to making sure we're doing things right. And so I just appreciate all she does for our campus and everything, so thank you, Jody. I got your certificates in here, so I'll get to those at the end. And last but not least, I have Mrs. Stephanie Harrison as our volunteer. I won't tell everyone your nickname. I know Stephanie a long time, and so it's been pretty cool this year to work with her as the PTSO board member. I was telling her the other day when she had dropped her kids off, and I had called her and said, "Hey, are you in the neighborhood?" "Yes." "Can you come by school?" "What do you want?" "Can you just come by? I need to give you something in person." So she's like, "All right, but I'm not coming in." So she pulled up, and I went out and gave her the invitation for tonight. And so she never says no, right? So anytime we talk about stuff or things for staff or things for students that we want to do on campus, she always finds a way to say yes. Whether I text her at 6 in the morning or I text her at midnight. Honestly, she's always answering my text. I'm throwing ideas at her to different things to do. And so she spearheaded all kinds of stuff. We have an amazing PTSO group. So I appreciate all she does. Hopefully we find someone on our open house night to kind of fill in her shoes for next year. But I told her the other day we have very big shoes to fill, and we're going to miss you. So thanks for all you do, Stephanie. Do what? Oh, that's a great question. Joey, do you have anyone you'd like to acknowledge?
Yeah, my grandma, my uncle, and my brother. We're here.
Awesome. Miss Harrison, do you have anyone to acknowledge?
Well, I had some surprise friends come today. My kids are here and my parents are here tonight.
Mrs. Wiles, do you have anyone to acknowledge?
My husband, my son Bryce, his girlfriend, and Pam and John Stone. And the math department.
And the math department?
And the math department. They might not have known it, but they were here.
And Miss Baywick, do you have anyone to acknowledge? Oh, she wants to take the mic. Here we go.
Oh, well, then how will they hear me? I just want to thank the colleagues from Sossaman, especially the math department, who are not just colleagues, but close personal friends, and thanking them for being here to support all of us out here. Thank you.
Congratulations. We'll take a picture with you. Oops, sorry. Thank you so much. Appreciate you and what you do. Like we promised, we love celebrating. And so to acknowledge and honor our board member, we're going to take just a second. We're going to open this up, and we have chocolate and vanilla cupcakes. And if you would like something, please come and have some. We will start the meeting again in about a minute. So, Vice President Anderson, members of the board, I'll conclude this evening's superintendent report with some upcoming events. As you know, we are in the last week of the semester, this quarter, almost the conclusion of the first semester. Our students, our employees have worked so hard, and we are rounding to the very end, and we're so proud of them, and we wish them all a very wonderful holiday season with their families and loved ones. We do resume school, though, on Tuesday, January 3rd, and we have multiple, we're going to be very busy in January. These are just a few highlights of upcoming things. But that concludes this evening's superintendent report.
Thank you, Dr. Foley, and congratulations to all the students and staff that got recognized this evening. Love it. All right, next we're going to move on to the public hearing. At this time, the meeting will recess for the purpose of holding a public hearing on the proposed expenditure budget for the 2022-2023 school year in accordance with ARS 15-905.01 DE. Members of the audience are invited to make comments and ask questions during the public hearing.
All right. Yeah. That's usually my cue. Good evening, Vice President Anderson, members of the board. I seem to get to always follow the celebrations with business. Tonight we have our second revision of our 2023 budget. One second, let me see. There we go. Okay, so I just want to remind the board of our general Arizona School District budget timeline. Typically, we do not do a December revision. Tonight, we're bringing a December revision because of the district did exceed the ADE's budget limit by 1% of the JBL. So what that means is we have two budgeted control funds. We've talked about these a lot, our district operational budget, our maintenance and operations, and our capital budget. And so each of those are treated separately at ADE. Arizona Department of Education. And so if either one of those exceeds the budget limit by more than 1%, we are required to do a budget revision. I got it working? Yeah. And so what triggered this budget revision tonight was our capital budget exceeded the threshold by 1%. And I'll go into a little detail on why that happened. But we also took the time to revise our total budget to match some other numbers that have changed since our first revision in July. And so you'll see here we're at that second budget bubble in December. We will have to again revise in May. That is required to true up our budget to the 100th day ADM. However, with doing a December budget revision, there will not be much change from December to May, considering we're only about 30 days from that 100th day date, which is in early January. And then in June, as you'll see later in the presentation, we'll start talking about the fiscal 24 budget. and we legally propose and adopt that in June. Well, maybe it's not working. Okay, so some of the highlights as to why we're doing a budget revision today, and then what changes we also took advantage of in making during this time. So the first thing that triggered it, like I mentioned, the 2 budget funds. The capital budget triggered the revision that we're doing today. We overestimated about $734,000 on our capital budget balance carry forward. So what that means, we essentially expended more as we ended the fiscal year last year than we anticipated. So when we adopt a budget, we were not completely done with all of our expenditures in the prior fiscal year, and we had more capital expenditures than we anticipated. And so that's what's triggering the budget revision today. But on the second highlight here, we also took advantage of truing up some of our other operational or budget numbers. So we are experiencing a slight decrease in ADM. So that right now is at 128, approximately 1% of our total ADM. What we're seeing across, not only in our district, but across the state is a decline in kinder enrollment. Now we don't know, where exactly this stems from, but the conversations are around the decline or causes of COVID, right? The COVID bubble, as they're calling it. So I can't truly explain that, but I know we're not the only ones in that boat with that kinder loss. And so with this budget revision, we are revising our ADM projections down by 128. Again, we'll true that up when we get our final 100-day ADM numbers on January 15th, as you'll see there, and finalize that in May. The last thing, which is kind of a catch-all, and the M&O adjustment, so rather than under budgeting, we underestimated in M&O. And so we had, as presented in October on the annual financial report, we had several vacancy savings that we did not basically budget for, or we underestimated. So we're capturing those savings on this budget revision. That was approximately $2.3 million in underestimated budget balance carry forward. So that's an increase to our M&O budget. Again, largely due to vacancy savings. And then the third bullet there, we're still maintaining that $8 million transfer. If you recall, in July, we made that transfer higher because of the onus that we didn't know what the election's result would be. As we know now, the election for our 22 bond failed. And so we're maintaining that $8 million transfer from M&O to capital to help support some of our capital projects that we have ongoing. So looking in detail at those 2 budget groups, first the maintenance and operations. So the first line there is what we revised to on July 20th, the revision number 1, revenue control limit. That $119 million represents our total operational budget that we revised to in July 20th. Again, we are still do not have any exemption to the aggregate expenditure limit at this point in time. There's conversations that a special session may be taking place prior to new legislation taking their seats in January, but that is all conversation and nothing has taken place. There is concern that the new legislators that are taking seat, it'll be tougher to pass an exemption this year. And so as you know, though, we've budgeted for Higley in itself to absorb that 17% loss. And so there would be no impeding action for our district in terms of layoffs or anything like that that would affect our operational or daily duties. So moving down to the second line there, this reflects the budget revision number 2. You can see the M&O adjustments for the underestimated budget balance carry forward, increasing the budget just less than 1%. The reason why it's not that $2.3 million that I just mentioned is because we're decreasing our budget for that 128 student loss. So that when you take the carryover that we underestimated and the decrease in ADM, it nets to about $766,000 an increase to our operational budget. And again, I already mentioned the transfer that we're maintaining. As we now know, we do not have a bond. So any questions on the operational budget? And so then the capital budget, this is again where the ADE, this is where our revision was triggered. We initially revised in July our capital budget to 28.9 million. We are revising down because of that overestimation. The capital budget is also funded on ADM, and so there is a little more, there's also a decrease in ADM as well. To that formula, again, these are both formula-based, and so that difference there is the 734,000, which is roughly 2.5% decrease in the capital budget. We did have carryover in that budget, and so that's where that decrease will be removed from. So we'll be decreasing our carryover, or basically our budget balance carryover amount to accommodate that reduction. And so just a couple final reminders on this fiscal 23 budget. I'm not talking into next year yet. Again, we will have to make a budget revision number 3. That will more than likely take place in April based on our board meeting agendas. Or excuse me, I jumped ahead a little bit. Budget revision number 3, if a resolution is not passed by the Arizona legislature, we will have to revise down our budget 17% by April 1st. And again, I've already alluded to, but Higley is in a place where we would be able to absorb that reduction for fiscal 23. And then how the aggregate expenditure limit works is that just resets on July 1. And so that budget would come right back into the fiscal 24 budget. And then budget version number 4, it could be number 3, but this is something we will have to do in May 15th to true up our budget to the 100-day ADM number. So a couple moving targets here, but all in all, the district budget is, the 2 budget revisions to the operational and the capital is pretty much a net 0. We actually net increase. But again, this is required by the Arizona Department of Education per their statute. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I think we're good. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the public who'd like to speak? No? All right. Thank you. We're gonna, okay, thank you. We're gonna go ahead and reconvene back to open session. And we will now be going to the request to speak. We value input from our constituents. This time has been set aside for anyone from the audience who wishes to address the board. Please remember this is not an appropriate venue to evaluate, discuss, or criticize district personnel. Policy KEB provides a process for complaints about personnel. Speakers should be aware that false statements about individuals may result in civil liability. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later time or date. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes, and we do have a request to speak from Drew Young.
So first, I'll apologize. I didn't know it was a night of celebration, so being a wet towel was not my intent. My son is a freshman at Williamsfield High School. Last Thursday, he was in his weights class when he observed 2 other students engaging in a disagreement that was escalating. My son walked over and told one of the students to calm down as he attempted to bring that student away from the situation. While doing this, the other student hit my son in the head with a wooden paddle, which caused a bump and small laceration on the left side of his head. My son responded in self-defense by striking the assaultive student in the face 1 time. This concluded any kind of physical force. One of the coaches told the boys to knock it off, and the boys all finished class without further incident. Later in the day, my son decided to go down and notify administration what had happened due to there being a history of this other student causing problems with classmates. Administration took my son's statement and stated they would speak to the other students the following day. I was contacted Friday afternoon to come down for a meeting with the administrator, where I was informed that the situation was determined to be mutual combat. I was also provided with the student code of conduct policy regarding self-defense. When I asked if my son's statement was corroborated by other students, I was told that it was. I was also told that my son did not have a claim of self-defense because according to the code of conduct, force is not considered self-defense if the student can flee or contact a teacher. For the record, that is not self-defense, that is called self-preservation. This is better known as fight or flight. While neither are wrong, flight is reserved for those incapable of defending themselves, and fight is reserved for those that have been blessed with the act of aggression and not afraid to confront somebody. What are we teaching our children? I fully understand we want to prevent fighting. However, is a situation like this not teaching students that they only have two choices? They can either be a victim or get victimized, defend yourself, and get suspended. There's nothing wrong with a student who decides to flee when they have been victimized, but we should also make room for those who are not afraid to stand up for themselves and refuse to accept being a victim. The school gave this incident a whopping 4-sentence write-up and rubber-stamped it mutual combat. It is not mutual when my son is de-escalating a situation and is then assaulted with a weapon. To break this down, and these are undisputed by the school, my son attempted to de-escalate a situation involving 2 other students. My son was assaulted with a weapon which caused an injury. My son defended himself by punching the assailant 1 time in the mouth. My son notified administration when no other employee had. My son received a 9-day suspension, the same as the boy who assaulted him with a dangerous instrument. The school's administration dismissed this all and labeled it a mutually agreed upon fight. The principal dismissed crucial details and is acting as though his hands are tied in this situation. So I'm asking this board to immediately intervene as my son has already served 3 of his 9-day suspension. Furthermore, I'm asking and imploring this board to take a look at their definition of self-defense and make room for the students to actually protect themselves. I am proud of my son, and I know despite this administration's failure, he would take the same action tomorrow. If this board does not move to make changes, my fear is that you will deter kids from sticking up for themselves or others and create an environment where there's more victims and cell phone mafia where everybody just stands by and watches it goes on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we will move, or I will move to approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
Any questions or comments? No? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Okay, next we will begin with the information items. And the first item, 7.1, is the 2024 budget timeline. And is this Mr. Moore? Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Yep. Good evening, Vice President Anderson, members of the board. Not to confuse you with the earlier presentation, but now we are transitioning to next year, this budget. As we did last year, we like to come early December and present you with a brief kind of budget timeline on what we anticipate our governing board meetings to look like as we work through our fiscal 24 budget for next fiscal year. And so I've listed here all the board meetings from January to June and kind of given an approximate estimate of what items we'll be bringing in the conversations we'll be having as we approach the adoption of our budget in June and start next fiscal year in July. I know it's already starting that conversation. So we have one board meeting in January. That is the board meeting where we'll bring a first review of our fiscal 24 maintenance and operation budget. This will probably be a skeleton budget as we do not have much information regarding what the legislator is going to do with a whole new group of individuals coming in. We'll have limited information as to what that budget will look like, but we will know a little bit about the basics. And so we'll do that first review on January 18th. On February 8th, we'll bring our first review of our capital budget. You're probably going to see the most changes in this capital budget with us not passing a bond and having some conversations regarding our priorities and our decisions within our capital budget. February 22nd, we'll bring a second review of our maintenance and operations budget. At this point, the legislature should have taken seat, and there should be some conversations regarding the K-12 budget bill for next fiscal year. and we hope to have some more information on that February 22nd meeting. We will bring contract language. Hopefully we have a Executive Director of HR at that time to help assist with that process, but I know Ms. Richards has been helping out in the meantime, and so as well as other consultants. So we will bring contract language. We will also bring a meet and confer wrap-up for the Prop 301 plan. That should say fiscal 24. Moving into March, we do have March 8th, the one board meeting due to spring break. We will bring the third review of the maintenance and operations budget. At this time, we'll talk about any potential compensation increases or anything changes regarding employee compensation that will affect the budget. We will ask for a tentative approval so we can issue contracts for our teachers and administrators. As you know, every district is trying to be the first one to issue those contracts to secure those teacher positions, and I think this year will be the same as we're still in a teacher shortage across the state. And so getting teachers committed and signed to contract for next fiscal year helps our budget process and helps us fill those positions that may not be returning to next fiscal year. So I'll also present a second review of our capital budget. This will be a detailed review of every single department, and as we've done in the past, highlight some of the major capital purchases that come from our capital budget. We will, again, ask for consent, again, for this approval of teacher and admin contracts, and they're given a 15-day window to approve those. Moving to April, we will bring our classified at-will work agreements. Again, those are at-will work agreements. They don't necessarily need to go in March as those are at-will work agreements, and they're not constituent on contracts. We will ask for tentative approval on our capital budget to get ahead of those long lead items and allow our, specifically our maintenance department and potentially ed service department to get ahead and make those purchase orders in place to procure those items that do require long lead items. We will then bring the approval of the salary schedules for all employee groups at that board meeting, and also talk about open enrollment and benefits. And so I've been working with Ms. Isabel Bagnado, now our benefits manager, and as we've have about 4 months of experience moving into our self-insured program, it's been very well received. So our claims are very low, my knock on wood. And so we look to potentially make some enhancements to our benefit program to our employees to offset those costs because we've had such good experience. So very excited to start that conversation. We're already seeing the fruit of our fruition from moving to self-insured. And so I commend the board for working with us to move that way, and we'll be able to make some benefits enhancements to our employees in our benefits package that we offer. So that's very exciting. And then lastly, we wrap up, like as I mentioned, in May, we'll approve the fiscal 23 budget revision. That's truing up our budget to 100th ADM. And in June, we'll officially propose our fiscal 24 budget. On June 7th and June 21st, we'll have a public hearing to adopt that budget. We do have no crystal ball on if the state legislature will have a K-12 budget by then. As in the last couple of years, we've been operating and approving these budgets with hypotheticals. I fear we may be in the same position this year as well. Time will tell, but regardless of that, those are our legal statutory dates in which we have to adopt a budget. And so with that, that's a brief timeline of our fiscal 24 budget. So if there's any questions or anything the board would like to see during this budget cycle, I'll be happy to take suggestions or questions.
Doesn't look like it. I'm sure we'll be showered with lots of information in the foreseeable future. So thank you for offering information now. No questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Moore. And next, we'll move on to information item 7.2, the amendment to policy JLCD, which is medicine and administering medicines to students.
So, Vice President Anderson, members of the board, As we've shared with you, we've been working very hard on policy. We've been lovingly referring to this as the Policy Palooza meeting, because you'll have several policies that we're going to go through here. We have been working with members of our leadership team who are going to take a minute to just quickly touch base with you on the legislative updates on each of these, and feel free to ask specific questions. We're going to go through several of these, and then these same policies we have this evening for us to wave through and do action items with, should there be no questions or concerns that you want us to return to you with. But we're wanting to get several of these ready to go as legislatively some of these hit right as we return back in January. So we will start this evening. So I'm going to ask Jillian to come up real quick, and we will rock through these and answer questions as necessary.
Vice President Anderson, members of the board, you can see the update to our JLCD policy. I have updated it to incorporate the newest legislation and the laws that Arizona and the Maricopa County Department of Health and the Arizona State Department of Health are requiring us and would like us to do in our schools. I have developed a Narcan, also known as naloxone, in this policy. I named both in there for reference. Training that I will start rolling that out once we come back from our Christmas break, New Year's break, so I'm ready to do that. And that is the biggest piece in there, other than, just some legislative laws that are listed and everything. That's it for me. No?
Any questions? Okay. Tiffany, you have a question? Ms. Schultz? I think she said she'll ask later, possibly.
Okay.
All right.
No problem.
I read this, now, and I'm like, did I read it wrong? So
that's okay. I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead. I'm okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jillian.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, moving right along in our policy palooza for item number 7.3. This one is policy IJNC, resource centers, media centers, and school libraries.
Good evening, Vice President Anderson, members of the board. Here to talk to you a little bit about the proposed policy changes for this particular policy. The updates that we're looking to add here follow along the Arizona School Board Association recommendations as far as putting ourselves in compliance with state law, allowing parents access to the library books and media titles that we have. This is currently something that they're able to do through our Destiny system, as well as to provide parents with the opportunity to request a list of the materials that their child may have checked out at that point in time, and so that they would be able to submit a form and get back the materials that they've gotten. Part of the policy language, as you can see, also defines who a parent is and who that caregiver is, once again in accordance with state law.
Any questions or comments?
Vice President Anderson? Just really quick, people might wonder why we're doing a policy on our library books and parents having access. A lot of these policies that we're going through tonight, there's been a change in legislation that, and this one catches people's attention, stating our parents need to have full access to our library media information and everything else. And we've never had an issue with it, but it defines on how it's available. So if people are wondering why we're doing a policy on parents and our media information, again, a lot of these policies we're going over were just approved by legislation requiring all school districts to have these policies, and one of them is that parents have an accessible list of information on what is in each of our school libraries and media centers. So I just wanted to clarify that because it seems kind of weird that we're doing a policy on this so that people understand why we're doing this policy. so that we're compliant with the law that goes into effect in January. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to move on to information item 7.4. This one is amendment to policy IMB, teaching about controversial or sensitive issues.
Thank you. Again, board member or Vice President Anderson, members of the board, this is an update to existing policy that we have as far as responsible approaches to teaching sensitive or controversial issues. Largely, the policy is unchanged. There are just a few minor suggestions that were presented by the Arizona School Board Association, mostly emphasizing the responsibility that teachers have to ethically and responsibly teach about these issues in classes for the instruction of our students. So again, in order to, as Board Member Reese said, to be in compliance with the law and also to keep up with our regional peers, we recommend adopting this language from the Arizona School Board Association into our policy.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this one? Thank you for, we've been asking for, when is this coming? And I thank you for, and of course, time-wise, we had to get it out as soon as we could. But it was interesting. As a teacher, I hear a lot of the fear, oh, things are coming, things are changing. But as we go through the policies, we already have a lot in place, and there's very little change, which I find. I'm hoping anybody watching or the public to definitely check out our agenda and look at our policies. You don't have to go dig through them. We've got them right here for you in the agenda. It's very crystal clear, and thank you, Mr. Tree, for clarifying information.
Vice President Anderson, that's an excellent point, because as you see, these state amendment to, these aren't new, they're amending and they're updating. And so when people look at this on our board agenda, they can actually see in blue what was added or changed. And you really see the majority of the policies are not substantially changed. Okay, ready to move on?
Yes.
All right, let's head on over to agenda item, information item 7.5. This one is amendment to policy IHA, Basic Instructional Program.
Thank you. Vice President Anderson, members of the board, here we actually do have a really nice, healthy addition, not just a couple of word change, but in fact, what again, the law is asking us to do. It's something that we wholly support, which is to establish a 9/11 instructional day. And so on this date, September 11th of each year, or whatever is the adjacent school day, if that day falls on a weekend, there will be specific instruction to all students using age-appropriate materials to teach about the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. The materials are being put together by the Arizona Department of Education, and we'll make certain that those materials are available and that the proper training is in the hands of our teachers so that they can carry this out on that important day. Along with that, the 9/11 aspect of this particular policy is the Sandra Day O'Connor Civics Celebration Day. And in a similar fashion, we're going to provide materials and support so that our schools can go ahead and add into that already robust curriculum, civics-specific lessons, using those materials, again, supplied through Arizona Department of Education.
Any questions or comments? It says for the school day, do you know, or can you clarify, will it be every class will be doing something, or is it dedicated to a government class or a certain content area?
Vice President Anderson, it's a great question. I think it will look different in different places. In a secondary environment where you have a dedicated course that every student rolls through, where they are talking about civics and the social sciences every day, that might be that point of contact for that lesson. But in a self-contained elementary classroom, it might be a portion of that day. It also could include school-wide events and those sorts of recognitions and acknowledgements. I'm envisioning it'll be a little bit of everything, but it will be at least something dedicated to, in the case of 9/11, instruction in an age-appropriate fashion for the events of that date, and in the case of the Civics Day, something that will allow there to be widespread celebration one way or another.
Great, thank you for answering that. All right, let's move on to agenda information item 7.6. This one is amendment to policy IJL, library materials selection and adoption.
Good evening, Vice President Anderson, members of the board. Next for your consideration are the amended changes to policy IJL, library materials selection and adoption. As you'll see, that's posted here, Arizona law requires a public review period for books and materials purchased after January 1st of 2023. The superintendent shall establish procedures to make books and materials purchased after this date available to the public for public review. We have worked together to provide access from the main district webpage with a button that will link to each of the schools. So each school will have updated books that have been purchased. So if something's purchased at Bridges, it will be available on the main page, okay? So it'll be school-specific and district-specific. So we're asking that you guys support this, and it's straight from ASBA as well.
Vice President Anderson. Just a quick question, Ms. Richards. That sounds amazing. I'm sure you guys have already thought about it, but having a process with our PTOs buy a lot of materials for our schools. They buy them specifically for, specific teachers or classrooms. They don't always buy for the whole school. So I'm just bringing it up. I'm sure you guys have already thought about it, but that way there's the communication with the PTOs that information has to go out here too.
So, Board Member Reese, thank you for bringing that up. We've been working directly through Valerie Thomas and Janie Ramirez with our bookstore managers and our media specialists to make sure these resources that are going to be housed in the library are available for review, because sometimes we don't know what's in there, but now we're going to see that. Plus, as Dr. Treat referenced, you can go in now and see in Destiny for each site which books are housed at each school. So this will be a running, updated resource for parents and kids. Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions?
Vice President Anderson, Board Member Reese, it's by the policy, it is almost like almost every quarter, it's like a 60-day review, similar to textbook adoption, although it doesn't go through a textbook adoption legally. But what will happen is it's almost going to be like a highlighted feature on there, like what's new in the library. And anything, regardless of the fund, would then have to be posted there now, which is one of the ways we have to, that's why the district's worked really hard to know everything that every funding source is used to purchase materials, where and how, and so that we can make sure it goes through the appropriate review and posting, as we are now legally required to do.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to information item 7.7. This one is amendment to policy JF, student admissions.
Vice President Anderson, members of the board, the next amendment we're going to review is to Governing Board Policy JF. This amendment adds language to the current policy that addresses some recent revisions through legislation that adds some language that covers the Certificate of Educational Convenience. Recent legislation has changed the eligibility requirements as well as some of the requirements of the district when we receive a Certificate of Educational Convenience. So this amendment just adds that language to the actual policy so that it's current.
No real big changes, just updating and adding. Any questions or comments? Thank you. All right, information item 7.8. This one is amendment to policy JLDA, school counselors and psychologists.
Yes, this amendment to this policy, JLDA, what this does is it also adds language to align with recent legislation that exempts school psychologists from being required to hold licensure when they're certified by the Department of Education to perform psychological services within the scope of their current contract in the school district. So it just exempted them from holding that licensure that is required through the Board of Examiners, psychological examiners, as school psychologists.
So what differentiates between the exam and the certification? The same education, same capabilities, I would assume, or?
School counselors and counselors and psychologists that hold licensures are those individuals that are able to perform services with individuals and then bill insurance companies for those individual services and scope of practice. Our individuals do not do that with the certificate that they receive through the Department of Education.
All right, thank you, Ms. Miller. Moving on to information item 7.9. This one is amendment to policy DIA, accounting system. Mr. Moore?
Yep. Good evening, Vice President Anderson, members of the board. This is just a formality of adding the date to the requirement that districts can apply to assume accounting responsibility. We are already an accounting responsibility district, so we process our own payroll and expense warrants. We made that change when Mr. Gadd was in here, the district, so.
Ask again, any questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Moore. Information item 7.10, this one is amendment to policy EEA, bus driver requirements, training, and responsibilities.
Yes, the district, this is just another formality to include the recent statute into our board policy. We were already, Mr. Crosby in the Transportation Department was already requiring our bus drivers to be bus endorsed by the Department of Public Transportation and certified by the Department of Public Safety. So again, another formality to address the statute that was changed.
Already in practice, just putting the language in the policy. All right, thank you. Questions, comments? Okay. Moving on to information item 7.11. This one is amendment to policy EE, transportation services.
Yes, Vice President Anderson, members of the board, the district does not currently utilize vehicles to in this fashion. This statute was to help with charters and other privately operated public institutions to transport students. However, we did feel like we should add it to our policy in the case that we do, if there is an instance where we need to utilize a vehicle that carries at least 11, but not more than 15 to transport students. But we do not currently practice this. We utilize transportation vehicles that are buses and or white fleet, so.
No questions, no comments? Thank you. Moving on to information item 7.12. This one is amendment to policy JICFA, hazing.
Good evening, Vice President Anderson, members of the board. We're asking you tonight to amend policy JICFA, hazing. The ASBA has recommended for us to define hazing as what's defined through the Arizona State Statute 13-1215 and 1216. So rather than having competing definitions of hazing, we're asking to just adopt the definition defined by the state.
Any questions or comments? No? Okay. Thank you. All right, moving on to information item 7.13. Amendment to policy GCO, evaluation of professional staff members.
Vice President Anderson, members of the board, we are asking that you approve our recommendations to this policy so that it aligns to our new evaluation instrument Danielson's Framework for Teaching. That's the instrument that's being used with our professional staff members, as you know, this year. We've also included the amended regulations that support the updated policy. This is all in alignment with ARS 15537.
Thank you. This one was probably a significant amount of work, I would assume. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, that concludes our information items, and now we are moving on to our action items, beginning with agenda item 8.1. And this is where I move to approve, I assume. Okay. I move to approve the 2023-2024 course guides for the high school, middle school, and special education and Higley Virtual Academy.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Should I have addressed questions or comments before we approved? Good. Is it too late? No. In case anybody has any? We're good? Aye. Motion carries 3-0.
We went over it at length previously, so.
Thank you. We're moving on to agenda or action item 8.2. I move to approve the resolution to adopt a resolution approving the sale, execution, and delivery of certificates of participation in a lease purchase agreement. I move on to the whole thing. To consider and, if deemed advisable, to adopt. So, pardon, this is my first time. So I need to read the whole issue.
Yeah, read this.
The whole, okay. A little bit of redundancy, but I'll continue. Okay, and if deemed advisable, to adopt a resolution approving the sale, execution, and delivery of certificates of participation in a lease purchase agreement to provide the necessary financing of the district and adopting certain post-issuance continuing disclosure procedures and issuance of post-issuance tax compliance procedures.
Second.
Questions or comments?
Mr. Moore, nothing changed from when you presented on this, I'm assuming?
Actually, Board Member Reese, the market has moved in our favor over the last couple of weeks. So what we presented is actually more advantageous for the district. Again, I do want to knock on wood because we are not out in the market yet. With approval of this resolution, it just gives us the ability to proceed with this resolution and the financing that goes with it. But right now, we are looking better than what we presented on. Again, I don't want to throw numbers just yet, but we will present to the board when we close this deal the net increase in savings from moving the current lease structure to this lease structure that we're proposing today. It will be advantageous to the district.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask this before, but or earlier. Is there any updates in discussions at all, or the process of that? I know you said the financials, but.
Yeah, I'll invite our attorney, Mr. Jim Gill, to maybe give us a brief update on the discussions with JMF Higley. And as I know, hasn't been any
progress,
changes.
I should say, progress is there.
Yeah, I'll let Mr. Jim Gill elaborate.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Jim Gill with Gus Rosenfeld. And yes, good question, and I do have good news in that regard. We do actually have a letter agreement between the district and the foundation, JMF Higley. They have agreed to our terms. If you recall, we were a little bit concerned about the restrictive timing and when we could call the old bonds. We've gotten some relief on that, and a couple of other points that we were concerned about, so we're in good shape.
Thank you for all your work.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Thank you. Great question. Thank you for asking. Thank you. We've already seconded, correct? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you. All right. Moving on to action item 8.3. I move in accordance with ARS 15-905E, Higley Unified was notified that the Arizona Department of Education reviewed the district's fiscal year 2023 budgeted expenditures to determine if those expenditures exceed the general budget and/or unrestricted capital budget limits. The analysis showed Higley Unified exceeded the unrestricted capital budget limit by 1% of its general budget limit. Therefore, Higley Unified has presented and revised its fiscal year 2023 budget as required within the calculated budget limits. And I go on to say that, so I move to approve that the governing, or move to approve the revised expenditure budget number 2 for the fiscal year 2022-2023 as presented.
Second.
Questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you. All right, agenda item 8.4. I move that the governing board approve the memorandum of understanding between Higley Unified School District Governing Board and the Higley Education Association outlined in the attached document for the 2022-2023 fiscal year.
Second.
Questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Agenda item 8.5. This one, I move to approve that the governing board waive the second reading of the policy and approve policy JLCD, medicines, administering medicines.
Second.
Questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Moving on to action item 8.6. I move that the governing board waive the second reading of the policy and then approve policy IJNC, resource centers, media centers, and school libraries.
Second.
Questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Moving on to 8.7. I move that the governing board waive the second reading of the policy and then approve policy IMB, teaching about controversial, sensitive issues.
Second.
Questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. 8.8, I move that the governing board waive the second reading of the policy and then approve policy IHA, basic instructional program.
Second.
Questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. 8.9, I move that the governing board waive the second reading of the policy and then approve policy IJL, library material selection and adoption.
Second.
Questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Let's move on to 8.10. I move that the governing board waive the second reading of the policy and then approve policy JF, student admissions.
Second.
Questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. This is fun.
I'm just so used to Mrs. Wilson seconding, but I forget we have to second.
All right, 8.11, I move that the governing board waive the second reading of the policy and then approve policy JLDA, school counselors and psychologists.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Agenda item 8.12, I move that the governing board waive the second reading of the policy and then approve policy DIA, accounting system. No, second, anybody?
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. 8.13, I move that the governing board waive the second reading of the policy and then approve policy EEA, bus driver requirements, training, and responsibilities.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Action item 8.14, I move that the governing board waive the second reading of the policy and then approve policy EE, transportation services.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Agenda item 8.15, I move that the governing board waive the second reading of the policy and then approve policy JICFA, hazing.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. 8.16. We got this. I approve that the governing board waive the second reading of the policy and then approve policy GCO, evaluation of professional staff members.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Well done, everyone. Thank you for sitting through all that. Policy Palooza has concluded. All right, moving on to future agenda items. Is there anything we need to discuss or bring forward?
Yes,
All
I
right.
would like this. A report on our transportation and where we're at for as far as shortages, where we are with getting kids on time and what's going on as far as that goes. I'd like to see where we are with all of that. Did I miss in status an enrollment numbers update as far as where we are with virtual and all of that? I know we were gonna get a status update. I thought it was every quarter.
And we provided them at the beginning of second quarter. We will go into the beginning of
next-
third, and connected with the staffing, you'll begin to see where we're recommending as far as sections as well.
Okay.
So that will be coming beginning of next semester. So it's coming.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. We did it in October, and you'll get
Right.
one in January.
I just didn't know if it was recently, with the end of the semester, if I had missed or something. But okay,
No,
January.
It's
perfect.
connected with all of the timelines we talked about with staffing and budget. This is deeply connected to that. So
Okay,
we'll be
perfect.
making those recommendations, or we'll provide that for you, and then maybe making staffing recommendations.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you for asking. Any other questions, comments, recommendations? All right. Let's move on to adjourning. 11.1, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Hey, I don't know. However you want to take that. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.